Good morning, good morning, welcome. Welcome to our second Needle and Thread Hannah Hosts Instagram TV. My name is Hannah, for those of you who don't know. I'm the founder and CEO of Needle and Thread. Today I'm going to be joined by a very, very special and incredibly talented guest all the way from Australia. So I appreciate actually some of you, I just said good morning, but I'm just very mindful it's the evening in Australia. And so whether it's the morning, afternoon, evening, thank you so much for joining us today. I think you are going to absolutely love meeting Megan. Megan is one of the most successful illustrators globally. She has illustrated for every fashion luxury house from Fendi to Dior to Valentino to Cartier. She is incredibly talented. She hand draws all of the illustrations herself. On top of that, she's recently launched, a couple of years ago, her own children's books, which are absolutely stunning. I can't wait to show you those. They make the perfect gifts. And Megan is also going to be giving us a sneak preview of her next book cover, which I can't wait for you to see. Perfect timing for Christmas gifts. Megan is one of the most successful businesswomen I know, but she is so grounded and so engaging. I love talking with her, and I've been a fan of her work for many, many years. And Megan is also a huge fan of Needle and Thread, and I'll come on to some images of Megan wearing us over the years. So I think without further ado, I'm going to ask Megan to join us, and if technology is on our side, her request will come through to me. In the meantime, whilst I'm waiting for her request to come in, let me just give you a little sneak preview of the book that I was talking about. How cute is this? You can get these on Amazon and they are the most beautiful quality. And if you want to actually listen to Megan telling the stories, you can watch that on her IGTV. Good morning, well, good evening, Megan. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry for the delay in coming on.
It happens.
But I worked it out.
I know. It happens, doesn't it? It does. You never quite know. I just adjust my screen a little bit. How are you this evening?
I'm really, really good. I'm really good. I'm never usually brilliant with technology things. So the fact that I have made it on here, Hannah, is a small
thumbs up. I know. Do you know what? I think, and I'm sure the audience will empathise, that this is all live, so if something's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong in front of everybody. So it's, it's a very authentic experience, isn't it? Yes. So Megan, thank you so much for joining us. We are such a big fan, and I've had the opportunity to speak to you about your work, and you are so engaging, and so you were just the perfect guest for me to bring on to my Hannah Host series, and I can't wait to talk to you today about your work.
Oh, well, as you know, I'm a huge fan of everything that you do and Needle and Thread, so I'm really excited too.
Good. Okay, so Megan, I think we should just get straight in. We've been inundated with questions from the audience over the last few days, where we've been posting things on Instagram, and so we've got lots of questions here. So we'll make a start. We'll try and get through it all before Instagram kicks us off in 60 minutes. We'll see how much we can squeeze in. So let's start at the beginning, Megan. Like, how did illustration and drawing come into your life?
Oh, I mean, I always describe that I honestly can't remember ever not drawing. And it's one of those things, it was the thing that when I was little and I was a kid that I loved to do. It was the thing that I would, I was doodling all day in school. I probably should have been listening more. It was the thing that I did on the weekends. I just always had a pen in my hand and I was just always drawing. And it was that one thing that I felt that I was really good at. And it's always brought me, even before I had a career in it, it's always brought me, even as a child, a sense of just absolute joy. And that feeling of drawing and creating something on a blank page has been something that I remember loving from, being a child.
And what did you used to draw? What was the subject for you when you were a kid?
Well, it's my parents told me that I would draw. I remembered as a child drawing my other classmates. So I would sit there and draw little caricatures of them. And my parents told me that even though they were kind of terrible, the drawings, they actually did sort of look like the child. So it was a backhanded compliment, but I think there was something. I think for me, from even a young age, there was something always really fascinating and interesting to me about other people and sketching them and drawing them and capturing a likeness. So, but I drew everything, and dresses and people and anything.
Amazing. So how do you go from being that child illustrating your classmates to having this global brand that you've built. Like, what's your journey been?
Well, a long one.
Yeah,
It didn't happen quickly.
for sure.
Look, it's my journey really, in short, because I don't want to waste our entire interview on
No,
it.
we're here. This is what we want to know about. Yeah.
Yeah, well, in short, when I was in high school, I had no idea that you could be a fashion illustrator, and I had no idea that you could do the things that I do today. I wanted to be an artist, and I wanted to draw, and I wanted to create, but I didn't really know what the career path was. So I ended up studying graphic design, because in high school I thought, you know, I won't be a starving artist. I think you get paid for graphic design. It'll be, maybe that'll be a path that will lead me to something. And so that's what I did. I studied graphic design, and you know, I always look back today, even though when I was studying graphic design, I kind of knew it wasn't the end goal, or it wasn't the exact right fit, but like everything that you do in life, it really was a great path to what I'm doing now. And it really taught me a lot, more things that I realize now than at the time, but it gave me a foundation to enter a creative world. And even today, and whilst I don't do graphic design now, when I'm putting together anything visual, because I did study it, I have that, I know when type is the wrong size, I know when things need to be ranged a certain way, or what a border should look like. So it's been really handy. And once I finished studying graphic design, I worked as an art director in advertising. I moved to London and lived in London for quite a few years, and I worked in lots of different creative jobs, and that was really the foundation for me, realizing that there's a lot of creative paths that you might not realize till you actually get into that field. And I started working as an art director for Liberty department store in London. And it was really there that I was, as an art director, asked to commission illustrators. And that's when I really realized, oh, I could actually be an artist full time. I could actually be an illustrator. And that's when I started to do two jobs at once, work all day as an art director for Liberty, and then work on my illustration at night to build up those clients. And that's kind of how I made the initial transition.
So, I mean, you must have been putting the hours in at that point in your career. I mean, two jobs, and a lot of people have to do that in the creative industry to really make their mark. Yeah,
and I that's why I always say to other people that, you know, if you think there's something that you really want to do, don't quit your day job if you can't, and most people can't, and then do that thing. I think if it's something that's meant for you and you want to do it late at night and you want to do it on the weekend to make it happen, then that's the sign that it is something that you truly want to do, if you're going to put that effort into it.
I agree. It's a bit like a calling, isn't it? You can't ignore that calling if you've got that in you, for sure. But it definitely takes the hours. There are no shortcuts. Tell us what happened in 2008 with the very, very famous Sex and the City book covers.
Well, that, you know, up until that point, by that stage I was working full-time as an illustrator and illustrating a lot of terrible things, horrible things that were, and I remember thinking that I would never get to the stage of working in luxury fashion or the things that I dreamt of. And at that stage I had found and met who I refer to her as sort of my mentor, but in some ways she's like a guardian angel. I met Justine Clay, who was a really key agent in New York, and she saw my work and was sort of the first person that really saw a potential for me for the future. And she guided me in that way, and she started to send my work out to everyone, and my work was seen by the publishers of Candace Bushnell. And then they contacted me to do the cover of Sex and the City. And
that's amazing.
That project was the project that it changed everything for me for two reasons. It changed it because it was a really huge project, and Sex and the City was the television show at the time was massive, and her book, she sells a lot of books, so doing the cover of that book in every country and every language was a really big first project. And that was one part. And the other really big part that was almost bigger was the fact that I had a mind switch, and I suddenly realized that actually anything is possible. And maybe there's this huge future for me after all that I thought I'd almost given up on. So I think that one cover, when I look at it, I remember my life changing in terms of suddenly working with a lot of luxury brands like Tiffany and Co. and Vanity Fair and those amazing companies. But my attitude changed, and I've realized at this point that, you know, talent and creativity is a tiny bit, and attitude is everything.
I totally agree. And I think what's really lovely, you know, for me to listen to, and I think for our followers as well, is this journey. You know, it hasn't been easy. Like, I think, you know, the creative sector is really difficult for us to break, and the commitment that it takes from, you know, for years and years. And you know, when you reference doing illustrations for things that you didn't feel passionate about, I think we've all done that as creatives. We've all done work that isn't necessarily our true calling, but you know, you've got to pay the bills. You know, you've got to build your portfolio, and I think that's really lovely for some of our followers to listen when they look at you, and you're so phenomenally skilled and successful, and you've got this huge global international social media following. And I think it's lovely for, you know, for me and our audience to listen about your journey, and that it just hasn't been this overnight thing. And I think that's so lovely when you talk about this turning point. And I totally agree with you about the mental attitude, and it's so much about that. But I know so many creative people who over the years have, you know, sort of struggled to keep that faith, because it can take years to get that lucky break, can't it?
It can. And you know, I still to this day there was a couple of really horrible projects I worked on before my life changed, and I keep a copy of them in my third drawer. So if I'm having a day where I'm, you know, tired because I've got a Dior project that I've got to finish and something for Tiffany and Co. And I'm thinking I'm tired. I think, no, look in that drawer at those things you had to draw. Before
that's a good reminder.
I'm immediately like internally grateful, because you remember, you know, what you had to work on, that wasn't that much fun.
Absolutely.
I think I will always be grateful.
Oh, so tell us about the Coffee Girls. I love this story, and I think our audience are gonna love how this came about.
So every Monday I draw a coffee girl, and I never intended this to be something that I would still be doing now. And I haven't worked out when I started this. I think it was six or 7 years ago, but it began with as one particular Monday morning. I remember the Friday before, I was working on a couple of really big projects, and the creative directors on those projects wanted me to redraw things, and I had a couple of other I had a Monday coming that I wasn't really looking forward to. And on Sunday night,
I think we've all had those. We've all had those.
I know the Sunday irks, and I had that Sunday night feeling where, oh, tomorrow Monday, and then I woke up Monday,
it's a horrible feeling.
Horrible. And I just felt like, oh, that sinking. And I remember walking to my studio and thinking, oh, as soon as I get a coffee, I'll be set on my way. And I came in and I looked at all the pile of things I had to draw, and I had such an epic day, and I thought, I'm just going to draw what I'm feeling right now. And I drew a girl standing there with sunglasses on, holding a coffee. And I think I put the words, may your Monday be fast and your coffee be strong, or something like that. And just posted it on Instagram. And then I felt good after I drew it. I thought, I spent, 10 minutes on it. I can now get on to my day. And then I went through my day getting everything done. And at the end of the day, I went back to my Instagram and looked at it, and my Instagram had just blown up with likes. It was the biggest, it was like this phenomenon. And I was so confused, because I thought, I've posted much more beautiful illustrations or things that are more engaging, I would have thought. And then there were so many comments about everyone having that feeling on a Monday. And it was actually a really, really key thing for me, because it was one of those first moments where I realized that image just really connected with people. And connection is something that I think about all the time in everything that I do. And I realized that, that drawing made people feel a certain way, and that made me feel really good. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to illustrate things that connect with people and make them feel good. And so from that Monday on, I drew one every Monday, and it's just become a thing that I don't think I can stop it now.
I think your followers might have something to say. Yeah, if you try to stop that now, I think your followers would definitely have a word with you. But I said this to you before, Megan. I love the fact that you were just having this not so amazing Monday, went to the coffee shop, 15 minutes later, and you've built like an iconic part of your brand. I mean, who does that?
It was an accident.
Well, it was a very happy accident, very, very happy accident.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd love to talk to you a bit more about the technical aspect of your work, because I understand that you hand draw everything, don't you?
Yes. So
Mm.
I hand draw everything in black and white ink. And I have one main pen that I work with, but then I have a collection of other pens depending on how fine I need the line work to be. And then, so everything's drawn at around sort of this scale, and as individual elements. And then I scan all of those elements. And when I'm building an illustration, one illustration will be made up of lots and lots of layers of the different drawings that I've drawn. And the reason for that is because I worked out early on that if I did it that way, I had freedom to change things later. And this is a very unromantic reason, but it's the truth. It meant
Very
that if I looked
practical,
at it
right?
later, yeah, and I thought, that lady in the foreground, I actually don't like her anymore. I want her not even in the scene, so I can delete her, or I can bring in a new person, or make something bigger or smaller. And it's also enabled me to be able to animate my work, because sometimes I'll work on something and it might be for a client and they just want it as a beautiful still illustration, but then they'll come back 2 weeks later and say, actually, we've got a budget to do an animation. Can we now animate it? And if I didn't draw it in layers, it's like starting from scratch. So
100%. I think any creative watching this right now will feel your pain on any kind of
yes,
creative changes. So 100%, I think having your illustrations in layers is a very good idea.
always layer.
And yeah, for sure. And do you just go straight into pen, Megan, or do you ever sort of pencil outline, or you're just straight in with that pen?
This is a funny thing, actually. It's always a no. I go straight in with pen, and this terrifies new clients, because when I say, because they always say, when will she send through roughs, and Martina, who I work with, always has to kind of breach this in the beginning, that she actually doesn't draw rough. She draws the line work is the final line work, and that's of course terrifying. But how I describe it is, it takes just as long for me to draw something really rough as it does to draw it in the actual style that all my illustrations look. So I don't like wasting time drawing anything roughly. I prefer to draw it, and and it still means I can change it. So technically I don't draw roughly, which
Interesting.
is odd, because most artists do, but it just
Yeah.
doesn't, it's quicker for me to draw it. And then sometimes you get it right the first time. So, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always aim for that.
And Megan, tell me about the scale of your work, because we've talked about this before. I mean, your work can go from like little postage stamps up to buildings, can't it?
Yeah, the scale is really interesting. I illustrate everything pretty much at, like I said, at around A4 scale. But depending on what the purpose of it is, so it might be that I've illustrated something. Let's say it's a Cartier building, and that's going to be used really tiny on a beautiful little embossed invitation for Cartier, and it's really small. Whereas I might illustrate something else that's then going to be 8 stories high on the side of a building, or on the bottom of a swimming pool, or on a wall that goes for 300 meters long. It completely depends. So I try to illustrate everything in one sort of scale, because that's the scale I'm comfortable at. But it's really fascinating to see my work transformed into completely different sizes.
Yeah. And quite unusual, actually, for one artist to bridge like so many different creative briefs like that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun doing something that's a bit different too, when it's used on something unexpected.
Yeah, for sure. Tell us about the little chic mouse. Yeah, the children's books. Yeah.
Clarice is, I mean, so the first Clarice book came out in 2018, but really I had been dreaming about doing a children's book from the moment that I had my first child, which was my daughter, 14 years ago. So I had always wanted to work on a children's book and have a children's character, but life after the Sex and the City cover, life's been busy, so I couldn't quite get it, and I couldn't quite get to the right character. And then it was on a work trip when I was in Paris. At the end of this long week, I'd been there for Fashion Week. Martina and I were there, and we were kind of like packing, ready to go. And I was sitting on my balcony at Le Bristol, where we always stay. And I was just relaxing from the week, thinking about how great everything went. And I looked across to one of the rooftops just across the street, and I saw a tiny little white mouse kind of pop up and just look around, and then she just darted back somewhere. And I remember just sitting there looking at it thinking, how chic to live in Paris, even if you are just a little mouse. And especially this part of Paris, it was the most, one of the most beautiful streets. And then I immediately started picturing, does she have a little apartment? Does she have amazing outfits? What is her life here? And I just started picturing it. And really that was the beginning of everything to do with creating her. And that world is just something that's so much fun the stories are so much fun to think of. The illustrations are so much fun to draw. And just, I think the connection with both kids and adults with Clarice has been a really fun journey so far.
I think these are the most beautiful little books. I have got a couple here. I was just showing them in the so I mean, they're just, I can't even tell you to the audience, like if you need a gift for a little girl, these are exquisite. And as I was saying earlier, you can go onto Megan's IGTVs and you can actually watch Megan reading them, and they are just so enchanting and charming. And I really think these are going to become like household names. You know how we all have like the Peter Rabbit collection.
Oh, that's
in our nurseries.
Dream. I hope so.
I really do. I honestly think they're so beautiful. And I think you're working on one that you might be able to tell us about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I have
a sneak preview.
Yes. Her next adventure is a Christmas story. So this will come out. It comes out globally, I think, on the 1st or 7th of October. And I've actually got a copy of it here. Should I show you?
Show us. Yes. Yeah. I'm answering on behalf of the whole audience. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the first time I've shown anyone the actual book. So I'm very proud to.
Oh, okay. So real preview.
This is the cover. Oh, can I fit that in here?
Yeah.
So
we can see that.
This is her. Lots of nice foil.
It's
called Holiday. It's called Holiday Heist. And without giving it, it's a heist, so I can't give the full story away. But she goes with her French family to Paris. To New York from Paris, and they have Christmas in New York. So she's left Paris for this story, but I think it's her best story yet. I really do. So I can't wait. I can't wait for everyone to see that, and that'll come out later in the year. But a Christmas story. Even before I'd drawn the first book, I had pictured it would be so great if I can get to a Christmas story, because as a kid I loved everything.
I agree.
Everything.
It's so perfect, and in plenty of time for Christmas as well. Oh, thank you for sharing that with us. I know that was a real sneak preview. What I'd love to talk to you about is your team size as well. Like, who is behind this Megan Hess business? Because I think Instagram is just such an interesting edit that we all put out there. But of course there are teams behind what we do. At Needle and Thread we have nearly 90 employees globally. People don't realise that. I know. It's not just me.
I know.
It's really
90.
Hannah, and that's really grown. That's taken us 7 years to get to that size. But my point is, it takes like a lot of people, doesn't it, to work on a brand? And I mean, you have a fantastic team behind you, don't you?
I really do. And I think, I always say I get all the glory and the credit because it's my name, but I couldn't do any of it without the team that I have. And, really the big changing point for me was when I met Martina, and most people who follow me on Instagram know her as well. She is actually in earshot. See, I couldn't even do this interview without her being here in case something went wrong technically. So she's here, so she'll be dying in the background. But yeah, when I met her, I was literally working by myself, and she was that person who came in and really helped me build a business beyond me just being an artist and me having my own retail and managing all my projects that I do in everywhere, and developing all the things that I've kind of done over the past about 7 or 8 years. So I definitely couldn't have done it without her. And, I look at it like it's very hard to find someone that I think you have a similar eye in terms of the way, especially when you're a visual person. So, and you have to really like each other. We travel all over the world. We've been stuck at airports for 10 hours together. We've had everything go wrong that can possibly go wrong, and we've celebrated everything that's gone right together. So I think
that's so nice. And you're completely right, Megan. I think it's really when a business, whatever shape or sector that is, I think it's when you go on the road, that's when you really like bond with your team, isn't it? When you're hosting events and the flowers haven't turned up, or it doesn't matter. You can do all the most impeccable planning, like something will always go wrong, and that's when your team like really have your back. And I really miss that at the moment with no travel.
Yes, and so that's why it's and aside from Martina as well, brought together an amazing team of other really incredible women that are so talented at what they do. They're far better than me. They're smarter than me at all the areas that they do, and they make the business look incredible. And also, it's a great thing to work with other really amazing women. I think that's something that I never thought I'd get. I never even thought I'd get to have a studio one day, let alone have a team of women that are amazing to work with. So that's a huge factor to why I can do all the things that I do. Without the support that I have, it would be impossible.
I totally agree, totally. And tell us about your studio. So obviously we can't see very much of it today, but it is absolutely beautiful. How did you get there? Because I don't think that was your first studio, was it?
No, I mean, in the very beginning, I worked on my dining room table, and that pre-Sex in the City. But then I had Martina and I, when we first worked together, we had a really small studio together, and it was tiny, but it was still lovely. And we both, I think, felt, and I've always felt like creating really beautiful images and just really getting into the mode to create. You really need to be in a great space, and I feel like having a space that makes you feel really creative is a huge thing and a huge asset to what I do. So the studio that we have now is in a great location. It's really close to where we live. We can both walk to it. And when we found it, it was horrible. It was an accounting firm where everything was brown and boxed in, and we basically had it gutted and started from scratch, and everything's, really white and airy, and it's a really nice separation from home too. I worked from home for years in the beginning, and it's nice to be able to get up, and if the kitchen's a mess, just walk out and shut the door and come to the studio and create and have and it helps create a bit of a separation between working home and work. But when I walk in this space every morning that I come to it, I have that butterfly feeling of, what am I going to create today? What projects am I working on? And I feel really grateful to have it.
I think your studio is beautiful. I think we're all drooling over your Instagram half the time. Tell us about your biggest success today, or some of the projects that you really felt quite passionate about.
It's always hard to choose a project because so many of them have a meaning for different things.
Yeah.
But I think in more recent years, the project that I did with Fendi is one that I always kind of go back to, because that project, I think, out of all the projects that I've done, I got to use every bit of what I love to do and everything.
I think actually, Megan, I'm just going to pull up a little picture. So this is just an example of Megan's work. This is the Fendi project, isn't it, that you're talking about?
That's it. Yeah, that project was a project we did when Karl Lagerfeld was still alive, and as he was the creative director of Fendi. And it was just an amazing project because it began with seeing this collection, the Carne collection, before it actually was shown at Milan Fashion Week. So getting a chance to see that was a huge honor. And then at the actual show where the collection was shown, I sketched live at that. And then after that, I went away, and Fendi said to me, we want you to come up with a campaign that will be global, that really tells the story of what this collection is. And I had all the notes from Karl as to what the designs were about, and it had a fairy tale element to it. But as you know, with Fendi's not just a straight fairy tale. They're edgy and they're very cool. And there had to be something a bit off kilter with this. It had to be a little bit different to just a fairy tale. So this was the most exciting thought of actually coming up with a concept. So I went away back to the studio, and when I was in the studio working on this with Martina, we were trying to think of ideas, and we both started with the thought of music. And we were just researching creepy, I think this is what we were searching, creepy fairy tale music. And we found this incredible piece of music. And then that was the spark for this idea of this imaginary Fendi palace. And I pictured that almost like conveyor belts like you would find in a sweet store where the sweets are going around, were all the Carnai bags that were in the collection, and that there were these imaginary Fendi bellhop boys that were making garments. And there were these, you know, the clocks kind of looked normal, but then the clocks were spinning really quickly, and it was just this imaginary world. And then when I pitched that idea back to them, and it was terrifying because the thought of giving Fendi an idea is nerve-wracking, but they loved it.
Of course, intimidating.
Yeah, it's terrifying, and the fact that they loved it and wanted me to kind of run with it was really exciting. And then just it coming together, and you would know this too. I mean, sometimes some projects you have the highest of hopes, but for some reason things intervene and it doesn't get to a place you want it to. But this got to a place that I dreamt that it would get to, and that's why that project will always kind of be something that I see as really special.
I think that's quite magical, isn't it, when you work on one of those projects and the energy, there's just something about it, and it's just a pleasure to work on those ones that just go so smoothly. I love that.
I think it's also that feeling which I think you would appreciate as well, where on some projects, and you hope for this with every project, but on some projects in the midst of creating it, you feel that sense of magic. You actually feel like something magical has happened, and that's how I felt with this one. And you try for it with everyone, but some just have a bigger dose of it than others.
And that's lovely, isn't it? What a beautiful feeling to work with that. I'm just going to touch on this little moment as well. I love this illustration. Tell us a little bit about this one.
So this one was for Valentino, and this was when they were introducing some new boutiques, and this particular bag was becoming their kind of signature bag. And Valentino is a brand that I've worked with several times, and it's one that there's something about it that's very, even with this illustration, very beautiful and romantic, but they have the rock studs on everything, and I think that's what's so cool about Valentino. It's that mix of soft and velvet, but with the studs. And I think, you know, with all brands that I work with, the starting point for me is always what is it about that brand that is completely unique to them. And any brand like Valentino or Fendi, any iconic brand that has been around for a very long time, I always look at it like they've been around for a very long time because someone or something in the very beginning was created, and it's never been lost along the way. So that's the thing that I always go back to when I'm drawing, especially with something like this.
Amazing. And you've been asked to illustrate some very, very famous women, haven't you, in your career?
And that's terrifying.
So I wanted to speak to you about this because you've illustrated Kate Blanchett, Nicole Kidman, Sarah Jessica Parker, and even the former First Lady, Michelle Obama. You've illustrated her. In fact, I can pull a couple of pictures here. I mean, how cute is that? But what is that like, trying to capture that likeness? Do you feel the pressure?
Yes,
yes.
I think the trick creating portraits is probably the most difficult thing that I would do in all the things, because drawing my characters is, I was going to say I can do that blindfolded, but I couldn't do that blindfolded, but they're my characters.
You're not like
so
it.
That's not a good idea, but I draw them very easily because they're my characters. And when you're drawing someone iconic and someone famous and everyone knows exactly what they look like, if you're like a millimeter off on their nose or their eye or something, it won't look like them. And so I think that's the really difficult part of it. And then it's also nerve-wracking that they will be happy with it and they will like it. So I think whilst it's challenging, when you get to that final stage and you know that they loved it, it's a huge relief. and it's a satisfying feeling too, and it's an honor, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's beautiful. I love this. and then we've just got a couple more. So that's Nicole Kidman.
And she's
And it was,
gorgeous.
yeah,
And I know you dress Sarah Jessica Parker. She's worn Needle and Thread.
she has. Yeah, she
I mean,
has.
who hasn't? But
we all have a massive girl crush on SJP at Needle
oh,
and Thread. I just love her.
I do
She
too.
looks beautiful here. And I mean, I do not envy you drawing these women. I mean, I think you've done them, you've really honoured them. I think they're beautiful, but I would certainly feel the pressure more than you, I think.
Yes, terrifying.
Oh, amazing. And tell us a bit about your Instagram feed. So, you know, your whole brand is so visual. I mean, how do you curate it? What's your approach to it?
I almost look at my Instagram as my own, everyone's Instagram is their own personal magazine in a way. It's what they, you know, you can edit it, you can put something up if you want. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And I think, you know, I've always seen Instagram as something really fun. I actually really enjoy Instagram. It's not, I've never seen it as a chore or something that I have to do for my business necessarily. But I think that's because I'm a visual person. So I'm someone who has never done Twitter because I'm not someone who wants to keep doing that, but I love creating beautiful images. So for me, Instagram is something that I really enjoy, and you know, it has been a huge part of my business, and I've always approached it in the sense that it's. I'm really grateful for the people who follow me, and I've always been very respectful of knowing that people can follow you or not follow you. And a lot of the people that do follow me are the people who do buy my books, who do support my artwork, who have really helped me build my brand. And for that reason, I've never gone down the path of doing anything that's not authentic, and I've never done paid posts or anything like that, or collaborated with anything that isn't legitimately something that I either love or that I'm working with. And I think, and I hope that then people who follow me see that and know that if I do post something and say I love this, they know that I really do love it, and it's not because I'm being paid to say it. And
absolutely,
so I've really been grateful for the people who follow me, and I've seen it as something that has been key to helping build my business.
And your feed is absolutely beautiful. Okay, so I want to talk.
It's very curated. It's not real. I mean, sometimes I look at my feed too when I'm just waiting at an airport and think it'd be nice to live in that life. You know, I know. Post pictures where I'm, you know, I think I joked with you the last time we talked when I'm at home and I can't find anything for us to eat, so I've opened a can and, you know, made a dinner that is terrible. I don't post that. So it is a polished version of what.
Of course, of course. Well, it's a very beautiful, polished version. So Megan, I'd love to start talking to you a little bit about your style, and firstly about your love affair with needle and thread. So Megan and I have been following each other and admiring each other's work for many, many years, and you've been wearing needle and thread for so many years, haven't you? And I absolutely love that. And you've worn them to your book tours and fashion shows, and you know, I love that. When was the first time you wore us?
Do you know what, I think when we first talked about this, I said that it was at Paris Couture Week, but I actually think, Hannah, I've thought about this, that I wore it even years before that to I had illustrated a royal wedding in Bangkok. And then I was invited to the wedding, and so Martina and I actually went to Bangkok, and I remember wearing one of your dresses there, and I feel like that might have been the first one. But after that,
wow.
I
That's
know
even
that
earlier. Okay.
I've been a stalker to the brand for you, for even earlier than what we thought. But I know that one of the key moments that I very first wore after that was to Paris Couture Week, and I wore a pair of embroidered, I keep wanting to say overalls, but they're not. What
like dungarees, we call them dungarees. I've actually got a picture here.
There it is. That was one of the key first event things that I wore needle and thread to, and so that was right there was me literally minutes about to go into Victor and Rolf to sketch live for them. And so that particular day at Paris Fashion Week, Couture Week, it was in the middle of summer, and I just loved it. I just remember thinking, this is such a awesome outfit. It was
you
something,
look
it was an
great.
outfit that I have worn several times since, and it was just a
Mm.
really, it was a really great moment.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'm going to bring up another picture, Megan. I absolutely love this one. You have to tell us
Oh,
what's happening here.
this picture, I think this picture is my most liked picture on Instagram ever.
Is
And
it?
well, it's such an awesome dress that this probably is my favorite dress, needle and thread dress, I think, of all of them. It's hard to beat.
Yeah, it really
It's
is.
like a cake. It's like a layered cake. That
Yeah.
dress, yeah, I wore that when I was in Paris, hence the Eiffel Tower,
Yeah.
on my last book tour. And Martina and I were about to go to the launch of my candle collection. And we had just done the book signing, and we were literally about to walk to it. And then we found this amazing spot. And I said, this is a great spot to get a photo in this dress.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
you know, like many things, people say this with fragrance, but I have this with fashion too. I can, when you have a great moment in something that you're wearing, that's something that you kind of remember forever. And even when I packed for that book tour and I knew that I was bringing that dress, I remember thinking, this has to be kept for a really good moment. I almost look at pieces and think, talk to them like they're human. I look at some that I haven't worn yet, and I look at them hanging up, and I'm like, you deserve a really good moment. I'm not going to wear you just to that, you know, that event thing. That no, you need something good. So that dress had been waiting, and I think that was a good moment for it.
Oh, that was like the ultimate moment. You couldn't have chosen a better moment.
No.
So Megan, tell me, how many needle and thread dresses do you own?
Hannah, I don't know if I should.
It has to be like more than me. I think you have more than me. I really do.
No, that's terrible. Do you know what? I tried to count. I think I do have around 30.
That is quite a lot.
That's not too bad.
That is more
But
than
in my
me.
defense, well, I do think on one hand I need to find a needle and thread support group for other people that have gone berserk and bought that many dresses. But in my defense, I have, you know, when we do a book tour, I mean, I wear them to all different events, but on a book tour, you do need to, in every country, there's about 10 different events, and you can't wear the same thing to any of it. So that's my justification. So
you do not need to justify. You do not need to justify. And why is Needle and Thread one of your go-to brands, especially when you're traveling with your book tours?
I mean, in general, when I first discovered the brand, the thing that I first loved was how the clothing looked, and I hadn't actually tried it on yet. I loved the aesthetic of it. I love that it's the dresses are timeless and beautiful and everything like that. But then when I first bought a couple and tried them on, I couldn't believe how flattering they were and how they just would fit. And I've always been someone that can't stand to be uncomfortable. I can't stand to have to wear uncomfortable underwear. I don't want to have to tape anything. I just want something that when you zip it up, it actually just looks good. So the fit has always been good. I've never had to alter anything. And the big thing for me, and this is what I tell everyone, because not this year, but in general, I travel a lot. And especially when I'm traveling for, say, a book tour, you don't need to iron your dresses. This is the magic. This is the secret ingredient.
It really is.
No, it really is, because sometimes on a book tour, for example, I'm in a country for 24 hours. And so you land and you look at the time and the flight was late, and I've got 20 minutes from checking into the hotel to being back down in a car to go to the book launch, and there's no time to even get an iron brought up to your room to try and iron a dress or even to steam it. So the dresses literally come straight out of the suitcase and they're just ready to go.
I mean, it's really hard to believe that, though, isn't it? When you look at the product and you think you roll it into a case and you can pull it out, like the dress you're wearing in Paris, I would imagine you just took that out of the bag and put it on.
Yes, isn't that incredible? So the dress on screen, for example, which looks like something that needs to be preserved in some kind of amazing way, that dress was at the top of the suitcase because it's huge.
It's big.
But it's all bark, no bite. It flattens down, and it flattens down, and as when you open up, it just springs out into these layers with, again, nothing needs to be ironed or steamed. And I think that you know, the practicality side of it, considering they don't look like practical dresses, they're so beautiful, but that has been a big thing for me with traveling, that they travel so well. And yeah,
that's good. Well, I'm glad that, you know, that you've taken the brand around the world for us, which is
yeah.
lovely. And you're wearing another one of our printed shawl dresses here. Was this for your book launch?
Well, this one here, well, do you know what? I've been wearing a lot of your dresses in during COVID, which sounds really weird, but I've still had to shoot a lot of things. And this was for my for the launch of Clarissa's Where Is book. And of course, I couldn't do a book signing and I couldn't go out to shoot anything. So that's actually me in my living room wearing one of the dresses. But I did a complete video in it. I shot all the photos in it. And it's actually been really nice to have the dresses to wear during this time as well, when I've needed to, you know, feel, you know, we all feel a bit, you know, during this time. And so to sort of lift my spirits, it's been great to kind of get back into them. And yeah, so that's what that one was for.
Oh, lovely. And then, I mean, you've worn us so many times. I'm not going to pull up every example, but I really love this because you wore us to celebrate Mother's Day, didn't you?
Yeah. That
and
that. Oh, and there's my son. Will.
Yeah.
We normally, like, my favorite day of the year is Mother's Day. I like it more than my birthday or Christmas. Mother's Day has always been my favorite day, and we have always, you know, because I love celebrating my mum, but also ever since I had my kids, we have always, ever since my daughter was a baby, my husband and my two children, the four of us have always gone out and had a really amazing high tea at different places, but that's what we always do on Mother's Day. And so this year, because it was COVID and we were trapped inside, I was really down about the fact that we couldn't go out. And Gwen, my daughter, said to me, why don't we make it really special at home? Wear one of your needle and thread dresses. Wear one that you've been waiting to wear that you haven't worn yet. And we're going to order in cakes. And we did a whole thing. And it was actually a really, really fun day. And that's another thing about, you know, sometimes a dress can just lift your spirits, just make you feel happy. And that really did on Mother's Day. I had an absolute ball at home wearing that.
I love that. And beautiful, beautiful children. And speaking of your children, I mean, how have you built this career and had a family? How have you done it?
Well, like all working mums, it's not easy at all. And it's, you know, trial and error and working it out as I go along. And I think it's one of those things that you know, I've come to a place where I honestly believe that there's no right or wrong way to do it, and you find what works for you. And, you know, when Gwen was really little, I essentially, my career took off when I first had Gwen. And so it was almost like the best and worst timing in a weird way, because suddenly I was a mum, and that's the best thing that can ever happen to you. And then suddenly my career took off. And I remember at the time, you know, even saying to my husband, what do I do? How am I going to do this? And he was like, you know, do what fills your heart, do what makes you happy. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm just going to try, and it's going to be crazy, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for motherhood. I'm going to go for being an artist and doing what I really want to do, and just hope that it all works out. And I had an interesting realization when my daughter turned 10, because when she was really little, you still doubt a lot of things. I think we all do, you know. I'm tired at night because I've worked now, I can only read 2 books. Are other mothers reading 4 books because they're not as exhausted? You know, all these things that you worry about that you do.
Sure.
Have me going away to do a project, traveling for 3 days, is that going to be a terrible effect on her life? All those things I did really worry about. And when she got to about 10, I remember a friend of ours who has a daughter who's 10 as well, the same age. And my friend decided to not work when she had her daughter, and she's very happy and with that decision. And we've stayed really close friends. And I remember us sitting on my deck, and our 2 daughters were playing. And I remember thinking to myself in my mind, they've had 2 different, I guess, upbringings in a way, with one mum not working and me working. And they're both completely happy, and they're both fine, and they're both great girls. And it sort of said to me that there is no right or wrong way, as long as you're doing what you feel's best for you and your family. you've got to kind of have faith in that. And I look back now, my daughter's 14, and you know, now she's smarter than me. I can't even help her with homework. This is what happens, Hannah. They surpass.
I know. I've got all this to come.
She's doing French exams and maths that I don't even understand, and I go to her for advice, and you know, I can have the conversations now with her, like when you were little and I did this or I did that. Did that worry you? Was that okay? And you know, she looks at me now and she's like, Mom, it's fine. It's all good. I'm proud of what you've done, and I hope I find something that I love. And now we're starting to talk about what she might do one day. So I'm happy with the way I did it, but it's taken me, but it took me years to kind of feel that way, which is, I think, as women and mums, we all, you know, we're figuring it out as we go.
Yeah, I totally agree. And thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of listeners may have younger children particularly, and that's when it's the hardest, when you're trying to fulfill your dreams, business career wise, and also have a family. And it's very difficult when children are little. But I think, you know, people will enjoy listening about your perspective, and you have two beautiful children, a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and they're beautiful and they're happy, and you know, it can be done. And I think it's inspirational for women to, you know, listen to somebody like you talking, and that it can be done. It is hard, but you know, if that is your dream and that's what you want to do, just go for it. Don't you think?
I think so. Yeah, and I also think too that letting go of it being perfect, whilst my Instagram, you know, all the photos often look, I guess, quite perfect in a sense, the way they're styled. But I think early on I realized that, you know, you can't do everything perfectly all the time, and actually that's completely fine as well. And I think when you let go of everything, but just focus on you being happy and your family being happy, the happiness bit, everything else I think falls into place. You find a way to make it work.
I totally agree. So, Megan, I know it's hard to believe, but we're beginning to run out of time.
Oh God, okay. You talk too much.
No, not at all. I think you and I are both quite chatty. We could definitely run over the Instagram 60-minute allotted time. No problem.
Oh my God.
So before we round up, tell us what's next for you. What have you got in the pipeline this year? I know you very kindly shared with us already an amazing new Clarice book that's coming out, but is there anything else that you're launching this year that we can know about?
Well, lots of exciting things. Some of them I can't talk about yet, but one that I can talk about back in the book side of things is, just as I showed you earlier, Clarice, her Christmas story is coming out. And on the same day, I have another book coming out, which is my next fashion book. And this time it's a larger scale, beautiful coffee table book all about couture.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that's going to be my big fashion book. I've actually got a picture. Can I show you of the cover?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely have to see this.
This is I don't have a physical book yet. It's literally getting printed.
Oh wow, it's still printing. Oh, stunning.
This is the cover. So it's the illustrated world of couture, and this is a book that everything gets worked on way before it actually comes out. But this book I worked on a lot of last year, and it's just really about the love of handcrafted, beautiful couture, and a few kind of secrets from behind the scenes of how it's made, who actually buys it and wears it, and there's some fascinating stories in it, and hopefully some beautiful illustrations. So I'm very excited about those two books coming out later this year.
I mean, I think you're having a good year, Megan, and I can't wait to see both of those new books. Yeah.
But still,
it's a bit of an odd one with COVID.
Yeah.
And when I know you've been traveling, you know, for your whole career. When COVID does relax, where would you like to go? What's going to be your first international stop?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm really have withdrawals from not traveling, and as soon as I can travel, I would love, first of all, to go on a family holiday with my husband and two kids, and we love going to Hawaii. That's our favorite family spot. So I think Hawaii. Work-wise, I love London, Paris, and New York. London because I lived there, and I always have that feeling of nostalgia when I go back there. Paris, because Paris is just still the most romantic, most inspiring city, I think, in the world. And New York, I always love going back to New York, because New York is the city that gave me my first break. And so every time I land back in New York, and I get back to literally the plane touches down, I have those butterfly feelings in my stomach that something amazing could happen. So they're the 3 cities work-wise I'll get back to, and hopefully I'll be sitting with my kids and my husband in Hawaii, and we will be out of the house.
Yes. Well, let's just keep our fingers crossed, shall we, for the rest of the year.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Megan, you have been the most delightful guest. I can't thank you enough for joining us. I know you're incredibly busy. I also know that it's your dinner time, it's your evening, so we've really eaten into your evening time. So thank you so much for your time. And I look
Thank
forward
you for
to
having me, and thank you for the amazing clothes that you create, and you will see me stalking and wearing. I'll be building on my 30 very soon. It'll be, and I'm looking at the support group.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Megan, thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.
I will.
Take care. Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye. You can just... Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. I think you can agree with me that Megan is just so engaging, and apologies, there was so much more that I wanted to talk to Megan about, but unfortunately we are restricted to a 60-minute time frame here, so we are sort of on the verge of running out of time, so maybe we have to do another one day. But thank you so much for listening and support, and we'll be posting this on the Needle and Thread feed, as will Megan Hess, in the next few days. So leave us comments, tell us what you think, give us feedback, tell us who you'd like us to invite on to Hannah Host next, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Take care.